That looks pretty good on camera. Up close, it doesn't look great. This week, I try to teach myself how to do a neon sign. And in the process of me going through the motions to make this, it led me to a new discovery to figure out if I could potentially use resin. Now, I don't know if this has been done before. I personally haven't done it. So even if it has been done or somebody else is making them like this, I personally wanted to figure out my own method. So the only way to do that is to go through it. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I went from this practical sort of fake neon to this resin version that I made and what I learned in the process. What I learned in this video is going to streamline future versions of this type of work. And the only way you could do that is get your hands in the material and experiment. And that's what this whole video is about. This product development, this experimentation about making these types of neon signs, fake neon signs. Okay, it starts here on the CNC machine. This is 1/4-inch plexiglass, and I'm using Vectrix to make a file. Now this is just a random file that I made. This isn't anything in particular. I'm working with my partners in Arkansas, and they said, let's explore making fake LED neon signs. And so we got some material to make a fake neon sign. And obviously there's lots of research to be done out there, and there's lots of people doing this. This isn't rocket science. I could certainly investigate and figure it out. But I wanted to just play blindly, only because I really wanted to give myself an opportunity to develop some new methodology, if there is room for a new method. I don't really know. And even at the conclusion of this video, I don't really know. But what I do know is the learning needs to take place. I need to go through the steps, and there was lots of breakthroughs from step 1 to step 2. This is my wiring for the first version, done in the somewhat traditional manner. And the way I soldered the wires was from the back to the front, which I realized is a big mistake. And this sign works. It lights up, but every time I moved it, I'd break one of the solder joints. And I resoldered everything to the new method, which I'll show you. I use explicitly in the second version of the sign. And I do the rubber. This is all available at Sign Supply. This rubber goes over the LED strips, and then there you go. We're done. But making all the bends, the joints, and all that stuff is very difficult. And up close, the sign is very sloppy, like I said. So I said, let me make a version 2 without all the sawdust from the CNC. Let me laser cut it. Hey guys, if you like what you see, there's only going to be 200 of these hammers available, designed exclusively by me. The head is made by DFM Toolworks in Chicago, and the handle was made by Liam Hoffman. It's a wonderful collaboration between the three of us. Please click the link in the description for this limited time only brass hammer. A brass hammer is an absolute must for any shop. Lately you see me using it for leather work quite a bit, but in the machine shop it is a must to tap things on the lathe and bring things into square and zero. Thank you always for the love and support, and find me over on Patreon for some exclusive content. If I'm going to laser cut it, I need to do 2 layers. Laser cut a full 1/4 inch through the top layer and glue it to a backing. Now you see here the trough is going to be those parts in between, and that extra part that's left over I don't need. Here you see I'm just using tape to pull it out of my Thunder laser. And all the negative space is what I need, because the positive space is going to be the letters. Now this is the backing, and I just etch it. I just cut into it so I have proper placement. Now again, this is the negative. This is going to get glued to the top of the backing, and I'm just etching so all the placement from the original vector file is all still in place. And now this is the breakthrough with the LEDs. I cut these windows, and the LED strips are going to fold through the back, and it gives me a perfect opportunity to solder everything from the back. And now here are the parts. I'm going to glue them together with methylene chloride, and I'm laying the parts out. Now in my mind, I think I'm still going to lay the LED strips in between in that negative space and keep the backing clear. It hasn't occurred to me yet to use resin. I'm still thinking that I'm going to make a more efficient version of the first one I made, but cleaner and neater, because it's laser cut, and the trough for the LEDs will be deeper and easier for me to push the rubber into. Now this is what I'm thinking. This is the methylene chloride. It's the plastic glue. And the applicator is this glass syringe. Derek got me this. Derek from Malden found these, and they work really good. And the problem I'm having here with this sign, as I'm discovering it, if you don't get methylene chloride completely underneath and in between each piece, you end up with a webbed looking glue joint that does not look perfect. And it's a little unsightly. So as I'm gluing it, I'm thinking to myself, how can I solve that problem? I said, let me paint it black. If I paint it black, then the fake neon will pop. It'll look better. And I'll hide all the mistakes. So I'm thinking, if I'm ever going to do production of this, I'm going to have to laser cut all this in black. I won't have to worry about painting it. Get black plastic. And this is how the glue works. You can't see it on camera, but it goes up and under there. You can see it kind of squirting in between the two surfaces a little bit. But unless it's completely between both surfaces, it does not look good. Considering all the glue looks very unsightly, I grab a can of satin Rust-Oleum and I spray paint it black. And it's while I'm spraying it black that I think to myself, wouldn't it be interesting if I poured resin inside of this trough? And I said, all right, let me just go to the next step. Let me keep moving forward. Let me put the LED strips in and take a look at it. And as I'm putting the LED strips in, I'm wrapping around the pieces to the back. This is my first breakthrough. These LED strips have a little positive and a little negative solder spot, and as long as you snip it through that solder spot, they're about every inch, that's the spot where you would connect it to the next one. You daisy chain them together like Christmas tree lights, and by folding about an inch of a lead on both ends of each letter to the back, that gives me the space to solder. Okay, I got all the LED tape in place. Now, before I go further and solder them, I want to make sure each one of the strips works so that I don't have a problem later and I won't be able to fix it. This is the power source, output 1.2 volts. Then it goes to this, which is the LED RF controller. So this probably works directly, but this just gives you the remote control. Is positive, so I got to make sure right on the strip, each one of these little spots where there's a little solder joint, I could just tap on it with this and it should light up. So we'll try the eye first. Oh, we got it. We got a broken joint right there. See, that's why I check. We got it. So that broke right there. From here down, it's not lighting, so I got to pull it out and see what happened. All right, so that's why we tested. If I would have put this all in the resin and that didn't work, that would have been difficult to fix. All right, I'll fix that and we'll come back. Where these LED strips switch back, it creates a bump, and I'm afraid when I pour the resin, it's going to stick up out of the bump, stick up above the surface. I have it now falling into a little groove. Now I'm soldering from the back. Another improvement I made was I bought this 22 gauge wire that comes in a casing. So you have your positive and negative wire that comes together in a casing. It makes it all together more cleaner. All your solder joints are flatter. And there we have it. Success. All right, so I got the solder joints. Everything seems to be working good. Now I have to seal up each one of these troughs that carry the LEDs. LED strips come through so that when I do the epoxy, it doesn't leak through to the back. And I'm just using dollops of silicone. I'm using silicone because you have the holes where the LEDs come in through, and then also where the wires. And silicone is sort of harmless when it comes to electrical joints and stuff. It also doesn't flow, so right where I'm putting it is where it's going to stay and cure. And I'm leaving the lights on to make sure I don't have a problem while I'm putting it on. Because I am going over a couple of the solder joints. I want to make sure that I don't break them. And now I'm preparing a bunch of epoxy. I over-prepared. I prepared way too much. Now, epoxy is part A and part B, 2 parts 1 to 1 part cure. And in this case, I'm only mixing the color in 1 part. And I want to make sure I have enough. I don't want to have to remix it every single time I go to pour, because then I'll get inconsistent colors. So I make enough to pour the whole sign, and I mixed up way too much, and then I played around with putting white in it, which I don't like at all. So by the end, I remake it in pure yellow. I've poured a couple of the letters, and I realized I'm not going to be deep enough to cover the LEDs. The LEDs make several hot spots. I don't know if I'm going to be able to lose that, but what I think I need to do, and this idea came to me while I was working on this. I didn't have this idea in the beginning of making this, which is something I always say, the breakthroughs happen while the work is happening. Now, this is just an idea. It's a breakthrough from where I started. Might not be the answer, but I'm going to laser cut a little raised edge out of the acrylic, and I'm going to give this troughed for each one of these neon, so-called neon letters. I'm going to make it a 1/4 inch deeper. So it's going to have a little raised edge all the way around everything. So when I pour the resin, it'll be that much thicker. It'll maybe disperse some of these hot spots in the lights, maybe not. Everything is sealed up now, so I know I'm not going to get any more pour through to the other side, what with the silicone and this sealed up. I'm going to go over to the other shop, laser cut an edge. I'm going to use light burn to offset inside and outside, and then I'm going to cut a little plastic edge and glue it down, take it from there. In Lightburn, which is the program you use to run the laser, there's a lot of tools just like in Illustrator. And in Lightburn, I took the original file and I offset it 100 thousandths, and that gave me the border. I'm not going to lie, this is the second time I did it. The first time I did it, my offset was in the wrong direction, so everything came out too skinny, and I had to redo it. And by offsetting it, and sometimes the letters run into each other, so that makes it all together a little bit easier, because the insides of the letters are individual pieces, but for the entire MAKE, the exterior part was one big piece, which made putting it on fairly easy. And sometimes when you laser cut acrylic, it laser in a very fine cone shape. So pulling it apart, they tend to stick together a little bit. So you just have to work it apart. And here you see me organizing what I do need, what I don't need, taking out what I do need, leaving behind what I don't need. I have lots of extra parts, and I'm going to be able to experiment with all types of resin pour signs at Workbench Con. I'm going to glue all these together, and that's what I need. And there you see all the different pieces, and that's the MAKE, all the exterior parts. There it is, peeled and ready to glue down. Now, the only thing I could think to glue this down with was methylene chloride, which is not great because it melts the paint. I glued this edge on top of the paint, which wasn't a great idea because the paint reacts to the glue, so it's completely sloppy. I'm hoping to redeem it by using epoxy. So I'm going to pour clear epoxy. It's going to seal the gap between the letters, which are going to be a color, and the outside, which now is going to be either clear or black. So this is just clear epoxy. If it leaks into the letters, it'll be underneath the next layer. Won't be a problem, and the light will still shine through it because it's clear. But as I'm working on this, I'm getting a much clearer idea of how to make it better. The next time around, I know exactly what to do, and that's why I'm continuing, I'm forging ahead with this experiment. When anything starts coming out shitty, you can just call it an experiment. But I've never done this method. Maybe it's out there, maybe somebody else has done it. But for me, it's the first time I'm doing this, so I'm learning it. And I'm having my own experiences. So let's see what happens. I'm going to try and pour this in the negative area. I'm only just trying to put a coat on here. I'm not trying to fill it up. I will fill up the inside of the letters, obviously, because that's going to give me that illusion that I'm looking for. What's nice about epoxy is it has this meniscus. That's when water reaches the edge of a glass and it rolls up. And that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to get that meniscus around each one of the letters, around the border, and that creates a lot of glare, a lot of gloss, and it makes everything look three-dimensional. So that meniscus is only just a little bit of a wetness layer thick, and it kisses the edge of everything. And now I'm going for broke. It's the next day. That clear is all cured, and now I'm going for a solid yellow. In the beginning, I mixed a little bit of white in the yellow, trying to make it more opaque, make it kind of feel frosted, but it just made it look a little bit too buttery and not quite as bright yellow. And now, since you got to do 2 to 1, I don't want to mess up. I want to make sure I just mark on the cup where I'm supposed to go, and that's the hardener. And I'm using Total Boat, and Total Boat provides you with these syringes. You just have to ask for them. And these syringes are to make an altogether cleaner application. and I had to go back and fill up the syringes several times. Now this is just a pure yellow, and don't forget I already have some yellow in there, and now I'm 1/4 inch deeper. And I want to maintain that meniscus. That meniscus curves is down, but because there's so much gloss going on, you don't realize that the meniscus seems like it's up. You can't really tell. And the one thing to be careful of is you don't want to fill it so much that you start to bubble up. Because as level as you make this, it's always going to pour out in one spot more than the other. So that inward curve, that concave feeling where the resin kisses the edge of the letter and then curves down and in, like I said, creates the illusion your eye can't really tell if it's out or in, especially since there's so much gloss going on and there's going to be a lot of light poking at you. You just don't want to overfill the letters. And then, of course, I've come this far. I've recovered from a pretty near big failure. I don't want to get resin all over the front of this sign, so I'm just being cautious, and I fill the syringe up several times. I keep going back and forth, and I'm being really careful. I don't want to get resin on that beautiful super gloss clear. I can get the color on there, and I was able to wipe it off a little bit, but I didn't want it a big tragedy. And now I'm going with just pure red for the border, just trying to make it as jazzy and poppy for camera, but also just experimenting with the different colors and how they cover the light. Now, already in my Patreon, a lot of people suggested a different type of LED strip that does not have dots on it, and there I make a big mistake. I'm able to recover, though, with some ear cleaners from Harbor Freight. Sells these big ones on wooden sticks. My patrons already told me about a different version of LEDs that don't tend to have the hot spots, which would probably work good under here. And what's nice about this is you have a good-looking sign, whether it's lit or not lit. So if the LEDs give up altogether, you still have a pretty decent-looking sign. And the one thing that sells this the most is the high-gloss cure of the resin, but also that curve. Wherever the resin kisses an edge, it's curved. And now it's hard to tell from camera, but all the color is up 1/4 inch higher than the back. And then that just helps that illusion that you're looking at neon. Now, if you've watched this far, thank you. Now, it's important to keep in mind that when I began my journey 7 days ago trying to mimic a technology that's already out there, I ended up here. And that's because I just kept tinkering and experimenting and looking for opportunities to make things different and better. And here I am. I have altogether a new discipline that I'm going to keep experimenting with, and that's what you should do with your work. Always experiment, explore, and look for opportunities to make things different. But don't forget, they have to be different and they have to be better. Different and better is the goal.